So we were tasked with putting together a cost estimate for the downtown improvements, some infrastructure type improvements. So in order to be able to quantify those improvements, we had to actually put together, a plan for downtown. And I want to say that this is completely, essentially conceptual, kind of gives you an idea what's possible. But essentially something that looks like this. These improvements would include roadway, sidewalk, drainage, landscaping, dry utility relocations. So we met with and gathered some of the criteria for this from City of Round Rock. We met with the project manager sometime last week to discuss some of the lesson learned on their project. The criteria they used, he actually gave me very recent bid tab information for some of their improvements that they have going on in downtown. And we discussed lots of different things. And so the estimated total project cost for a project of this size, and it can be phased or however y'all like to move forward with a project like this, would be about $8 million to $10 million. There's quite the variable there. Like I said, this is very conceptual at this level, but there's such things as what we envision for downtown. Do we envision it having the same density as we have now, or do we envision more density? And do we need to actually increase the sizes of our water and wastewater pipes for downtown? And so those are all type things. And right away, do we have enough right away for what we want to do? To kind of give you an idea of some of the criteria that we used is we used 26-foot streets with on-street parking. There's some locations where fit on-street parking on both sides. We used 45-degree angled parking, had big pedestrian areas at all the intersections. One thing that Round Rock did, and theirs is they have quite a bit of landscaping, but they placed it away from the intersection so that your sight triangles aren't impacted when you're trying to maneuver through downtown. So give you an idea of kind of some of the things that we're looking at in this plan. These are some pictures just from Google Drive of Round Rock's downtown. You can see how at the corners, they use brick pavers throughout their downtown, and as part of that, the difference between the $8 million and the $10 million, it's kind of your vision for that. If we want to go all pavers, 50% pavers, no pavers, I mean, there's variables there. This other picture shows you the parking on both sides and the pedestrian-friendly, intersections. Again, they do have quite a bit of landscaping. They also have a parking garage that they've constructed in the last few years. Talking to Tom, he helped implement a lot of this plan when he was out Round Rock, and the parking garage has the ability to be constructed 4 stories higher. So they kind of implemented a plan that continues to grow. But these are the type of improvements that we showed as part of this plan. Kind of where do we go from here? A vision for downtown. What do y'all want downtown to look like? Identify funding for the infrastructure. How are we going to fund infrastructure? How are we going to fund plans? And then essentially plan for the development. Our plan development. We need to start, looking at hiring engineers or landscape architects to start looking at our downtown area if this is something that y'all want to move forward with. And with that, I'll put it back on this page, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So the scope, that's loud. The scope we're talking about, the estimate is for up to Walnut Street, and it looks like from Railroad from Pecan to, where's that at? Is that Wilbarger, I guess? Mm-hmm. Up at the top corner.
Or the church that's there.
Okay. And that's $8 to $10 million there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that includes things, promenade-style sidewalks, like you said, the large tree wells. Okay.
And one important thing is also this also brings all of our overhead utilities mm-hmm. underground. And so that's another thing that we talked to Round Rock about, how they achieved that. And what they did is they built duct banks And they allocated so many conduits for the different utilities they had in the downtown area, but they also planned for growth in that. And so they actually, they put the duck banks actually right in the middle of the street. And so they owned the duck banks. And so they would essentially have an easement for the airspace in each conduit, and they would grant that easement over to the utility. So Encore had its own set of conduits. AT&T had its own set, and then Round Rock retained a set of conduits themselves for future use for other utilities that might come in the future.
What utility kind of access? Okay.
And so, significant costs, about $2 million of that is bringing those utilities underground. One thing, that Round Rock did and that we looked to was, through the alleyways, leaving the overhead in place. Generally, that's what alleys are for the utilities. But generally on all your roads would be taking those utilities under. And, at the intersection of Railroad and Pecan, that's going to be a significant task because there's quite a few utilities.
Does that plan include the pedestrian access from Railroad to Pecan, crossing the street, going from north to south, or no?
At this point, it does not currently. We focused on this, but maybe it's, like I said, it's just a concept at this point. So maybe you rather have that, that than some of this, or.
Well, I'm just trying to see our scope currently. So council, kind of what I was asking this for, seeing if it was a realistic cost that we compare, $8 to $10 million to rejuvenate downtown. It's quite a bit of money, but it's not something that would break the project idea. The next step, again, would be to go and get designs and plans in place. So this is a cost that I'm comfortable with. It's actually about half of what I was anticipating, to be honest with you, so I appreciate that. Again, they've kind of been working off of the vision I provided about a year ago. Doug, you've been kind of in on that as well. So I just would kind of want to see what y'all's thoughts are. Want to see if this was something y'all would want to move forward with in terms of going out and getting it engineered and getting an architect in place to develop a plan that we can then further this along to where we're now looking at trying to find funding for it.
So I was going to mention that Victor and I were at a conference this last week. One of the things we went to a session on downtown revitalization, and essentially what we heard: sidewalks, trees, streetscaping, the dry utilities tend to come out to about $8 million for, I think it was City and Roanoke, Decatur, Navasota.
Yeah, Navasota.
Navasota, which I'm not sure where Navasota is. Anyway,
It's on
but that cost seems to be in line.
You aren't from here, are you?
I'm not an Aggie, that's for sure.
You said it like a bad thing.
Actually, that's where Chuck Norris lives.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. He raises horses there.
Who's also an Aggie, I might want to
Impressive.
really support that.
But we digress.
Yeah, sorry,
Yes,
that's
sorry.
not on the agenda.
So I'm not surprised by the cost, but I am apprehensive about spending that. I know we've got a lot of plans that have already been drawn up and are on the shelf. I guess I would ask, when we talk about architectural and engineering plans, are any of our other plans that far along, or is that a new concept for us, taking that next step into architectural and engineering?
I don't believe we've ever taken a step into engineering.
Okay.
There's definitely plans that have been in place, and Trey might be able to better chime in on this one, where they've come down and have they created themes, some visioning. But I think that those plans are
We
they're
would
dated
need
at this
to-
point, and so we can
would
provide.
need to retain an engineering firm to do, not necessarily preliminary design, but just a scoping of this so that you could get an estimate that's a little bit more detailed than what we have. The purpose of which would be to provide that report to potentially a future bond committee so that they could consider this along with other projects for prioritization.
Or you could put an overlay over it, right? So do we have an architectural overlay right now, an engineering overlay to adopt these standards for downtown? And then also, I know we have a map somewhere that defines downtown. This seems limiting as far as the size and scale. This isn't adequate for downtown revitalization. It's a good start. I mean, if we want something to happen here, you're looking at the old building styles similar to what you have right across the street.
Correct. The
You want to
historical
do a
style.
minimum height and minimum spacing on the, I mean, right now, we have all these new construction going on down here, and they have these standalone buildings. If you want the old downtown of old, where you're putting 0 lot lines, and you're putting
Correct.
2-story buildings, and you're connecting up this doesn't address that vision, and I don't think that you have
No, I
the
agree.
community, a cohesive community agreement for what this needs to be. I think that this is something we need to start with, but do you want,
The-
this is a limited effort at this point. And
Well-
I think you need to expand it and look at the long-term vision for downtown. There's nothing worse than starting something that you don't know where the end is and what you want to get to.
Were you in the meeting where we talked about our architectural codes for downtown?
I don't believe so.
Okay. That is something we discussed. Architectural codes for the downtown business district. This is not the downtown business district. This is a smaller scope. You are correct. One of the main reasons that I wanted staff to focus on this area, which is, again, a smaller size, is to kind of put a showcase on the ground. There isn't a defined vision after all the community conferences we had, all the 12 years of details that we've gone over with this. There still isn't a cohesive vision. I wanted to focus on the business area right now and not impact the residences as much. When we have this on the ground and private investment starts getting involved, I believe that at that point we start looking at the broader scope. As it sits right now, this is the least impactful way to get this project started without interfering with private residents.
You should at least include Pecan in those businesses that are facing right now on the primary thoroughfare of downtown. That's just the offshoot. And the other things that you're going to want to tie into this is trailblazer type signage. You've got, like I said, I've said this before, we need to define the vision, go big or go home. And this is just,
I understand where you're getting at. It's
if
half
this
a
is
solution,
a
is what you're saying.
priority, then we need to make it a priority, and we need to go, and we need to have the pull up all the plans, lay it out. I don't want to see
Well-
planning by Google where we show what the Google downtowns of everywhere else.
We need-
We lay out the GIS, we lay out the footprint, again, you got to have a minimum size, a true economic potential for this to pay for itself, because you have to put your PID or your TRZ or whatever you're going to do to pay for this thing. You got to connect the roads back up to 685 to where you actually have a cohesive
Well, I
downtown
agree.
and make it something. And then also, you need a hook. You need an amenity here. And I think that I've talked about using that Mocan right away. We've talked about it a number of times where people want to come in here and put a freeway down the middle of Pflugerville. People I talk to really don't want that. I've had people tell me that they want to use it for other purposes. Then I've thrown out the idea of a regional hike and bike facility all the way down to Austin. I'm getting a lot of positive response from that. And that's something that if you put it here and you can build the vision for the community, it would be similar to the Beltline in Atlanta, where you had a abandoned rail line that they transformed the region into a 20-foot hike and bike facility, They're putting $1 million condos backing up to it. The people love it as an amenity. You've got small boutique-style restaurants occurring and popping up, small co-op type of markets where people go in, they buy their cup of coffee in the mornings, their pastries, and then in the afternoons they buy their craft beers and their snacks. I mean, that's what I hear that people want in this community is they want that next.
Well, this is a good time to tell staff this, because right now it's been Jeff Marsh and Doug Wise.
I have.
All right.
Doesn't mean that I can listen for them, but I can sure talk.
I have a potential opportunity for the council. Coming up in probably 60 days, we'll be having a discussion about some planning dollars that we set aside in this current fiscal year's budget. And so we had it partitioned off into various different groups, but before we adopted the budget, those planning dollars all got lumped together. And so we need to talk a little bit about what we're going to do with those planning dollars, and a part of that could potentially be that next step of looking at a bigger master plan for downtown. We had resisted doing that just a little bit because we actually have quite a stack of master plans we've done for downtown that really haven't worked out. Now, they've not been the most implementable plans, but we do have some in place.
And I think that for, looking at the $8 to $10 million investment in the seminar that was presented at TML on downtown revitalization, and the cities that were there, Roanoke and Decatur and so forth, made a substantial investment in their downtown plan. Actually, either one or two included a city hall. But I think that I would agree with Councilman Heath in terms of having a vision and having a plan that coincides with an investment of $8 to $10 million, as a matter of fact, in that visioning and planning, where perhaps we can lure a development or developer into partnering with us to make that investment. Because, I think revamping and revitalizing are two different things. To me, revitalizing a downtown is where you actually begin to create a destination and vitality and kind of a buzz about why people want to come to downtown Pflugerville, much like people go down to downtown Round Rock. I mean, they invested a lot of money in their downtown revitalization, but they have a number of venues there that are attracting people on a regular basis. I've been there to a number of them. And so for us to revitalize, to revamp the downtown with the infrastructure, I think it needs to coincide with some type of revitalization in terms of business development, whether it's an entertainment district or whether it's a boutique district or whatever it may be. And I think that goes along with the visioning process that I think we need to invest to make that investment of $8 to $10 million. I'm a big believer in the field of dreams. Build it and they will come. But I'd rather have a little more assurance that we're investing significantly with a substantial return, and we see that vibrancy and vitality injected into the downtown district. I mean, I only live 3 or 4 blocks from here, and so I think it's important to do that.
So would it be the will of council to utilize some of those funds, or is that a discussion we can have on that day? Because at that point, we will need to utilize funds to actually, instead of having council direct staff to then go out and spend money on a plan for this, an implementable plan that incorporates the whole downtown business district with the intention of growth, with the MOCAN right-of-way usages. I think that might be the point we're at, if this is where we're talking about.
2 points. I think that we get to go back to your strategic initiatives. How does this rank as far as our prioritization moving forward? 2, if this is a prioritization, then we need to have somebody go back and pull all those plans and give a uniform presentation on those plans without us sitting, well, what does it say? I want to see what those plans were, how it laid out the plan for this community, and what we did had significant input. Let's see what the recommendations of those goals are. I'm sorry, I haven't gone back to look at those, because they've been
It's
collecting
detailed
dust
very
for a
well.
shelf,
while.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's time for somebody to go back, dust off those plans, see what they've said previously. Let's see what we can glean as far as that work that's been previously done. Let's not restart and reinvent the wheel. And then collectively, let's talk about what the vision is for the community and agree on it with this council to be able to give staff direction, or you're going to get more shelfware that we're going to issue money. Somebody's going to go out there and do a study based upon whatever staff tells them to do. They're going to come back. Half of us aren't going to like it and think that it's a waste of money, or it'll be too pie in the sky, or it won't be a full implementation plan. And then we'll bicker over the fine details and not have anything to show for it. This has to be a top-down.
I agree. with
Also,
this.
have you started the meetings yet? The downtown?
We don't have a downtown committee.
So
We've only had one applicant.
what have we done to try to find applicants?
Put it online and not advertise for it.
Advertise?
Sent out an email blast, at least I got one, with all the committees that are up for application.
Because I fear that this is another situation of us spending money and time and effort in doing something that you're going to end up filling up the room again with residents yelling and screaming no, because that's what's happened. That's
Well,
the reason they're shelved currently.
That's the reason they're shelved currently, and that's the reason we limited it to the business area. Right now, those are where the businesses are. That's why we limited it to this size. Again, it's like a model home concept. It's
Well, but when you begin to think about what the vision is, and maybe it's not an entertainment district, and maybe it's, whatever it may be, is that
whatever the market dictates.
whatever the market dictates, I think it's still going to have a definite impact on the residents within a certain range of downtown, from a traffic perspective, a noise perspective, I mean, even parking perspective, and hopefully this particular plan would address that. And so I think that we need to plan carefully, and I agree. I mean, I was part of the downtown, whatever it was called, way back in the old days, where, and we actually put a pretty comprehensive plan in place, from the landscaping to architecture to everything. So there are things that are on the shelf that we have now since dismissed for one reason or another. And so if we really want to get serious about being serious about downtown, then I think the climate, and I'm just kind of speaking out loud here, of downtown has changed, even in my neighborhood, Jeff. I mean, we've had turnover in homeowners, and their younger families, or even young adults, single adults. And so there's a different climate in our old downtown, at least on this side of town. I don't know about the other side of town, because I've seen it change, so that I think they're probably more receptive to perhaps a new concept for downtown. So
I'm just saying, before we spend a lot of time and money, we need to get buy-in
Sure.
from
No, I
the
agree. I agree.
actual homeowners as well, because even though it is just the tiny little business district, and I agree that we should include the other side of Pecan as well, you're still going to end up with a bunch of people in the room, especially if they feel like you've tried to pull the wool over their eyes, or if you've tried to sneak it past them. And whether you've advertised or whatever you've done, there's just a lot of people out there that don't read. Sad but true, and
This is a
and
door
they're gonna
knocking
swear-
and
yeah, they're gonna
handing
swear
out
they didn't
flyers
know,
and tell
yeah,
folks
and that you
that-
tried to hide it from them, and it's gonna get ugly fast.
And I'm not sure that.
I'd
you're-
love to see revitalization of downtown. I'd love to see businesses in a thriving downtown, and I'd like to go to our downtown in the evenings instead of Round Rock. So I'd love to see it happen. I just want to make sure that we do it and don't spend some more money for another plan that's sitting on a shelf, because people felt like we were
Well,
just,
there's a problem. We don't have a plan sitting on the shelf. We have
there are, well,
And that's the real big kicker, is how do you tell people what you're trying to do if you don't have something you're trying to do? And that's the real hard part. And if we do go through all the plans for the last 12 to 15 years, that's going to be the legwork. So what we can do is go through the last 12 to 15 years, pull something together that's comprehensive, not just comprehensive, but actually comprehensive of everything we actually have going. Pull all that together, and then we can have something that we can actually present instead of a concept like this.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, this is nothing, what's being said now has been said before. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's-
I take, we need to, I think that apparently we haven't given good instructions to Brandon and city staff to be able to get us to a point where we can actively act on it. Plus, your implementation here, it may be, to Starlight's point, it may be better to move just a little further to the east and start with the available developable land that you have. Start your seed of downtown of what you want it to become, and then let it grow from there. This may not be the right spot. You may want to slide it because you'd have less community resistance. You'd be able to show people what we're trying to achieve. Just a suggestion.
I can understand that. So going forward, do y'all want to go forward with this? Again, I was told to get council buy-in on what we do. So if we're going forward, do we want to go forward? B, where do we want to go forward with? And C, do we need council, the full council, to say, let's do something, instead of, again, Jeff Marsh going through and trying to waste city time? What would y'all like to see done? Again, is it going back to the 12 to 14 years worth of plans, pulling it all together, and giving some recommendation to city staff, or having city staff go through it and come back to us with something?
I think it's a work session where they pull the information together, where they present it in a cohesive manner in a PowerPoint to lay out the history of those plans, what was done as far as creating those plans, what the coverage is, because the coverage was far more extensive. It ebbed and it flowed in and out as far as the geographic area that it covered. And
Well,
then,
can I make a recommendation on that point then?
sure.
Let's go through our planning meeting that we're gonna have in 60 days, you said. Let's go through that, see where the prioritizations are, see if we have dollars left over to then, if we do go through something so in-depth and we bring staff in on a weekend for a workshop, or at 6 o'clock and we dedicate a full hour-long, I don't know if an hour is gonna do it, but if we do have a workshop on this, then we at least have the ability to say, yes, we have dollars left over for the plan to be developed after we give direction.
And I think that it's incumbent upon us to sit down with staff to go through it when they're developing this effort, to where they have some insight to what some of us are thinking to where before they get here.
Yeah,
So it may be some work sessions with one or a subcommittee working with city staff and
the
arranging.
subcommittee has been working with city staff.
Well, I was,
Well, okay. You're getting feedback.
I'm getting feedback. This is what I wanted to hear.
well, you know, I plan to retire in Pflugerville, and I've been here for a long time, and I'll only be blocks from whatever revitalization happens in downtown, so I think long-term, it's worth looking at and trying to invest some type of planning money to figure out, and I agree with, again, Councilman Heath, and I usually don't do that too often, do I, Mike?
You'd be surprised if you go back and look.
Is that
More often than you think.
that, you know, having that vision for downtown, because I think there's more there than meets the eye. And I think as we start talking about it and develop some buzz, and whatever planning information we've had in the past, and some of it was really, really cool, I think, and we just didn't move on it either because of lack of money, funding, excitement, energy, whatever it might have been. All of the above is that, I mean, if we're serious about this, and we're not talking about $8 to $10 million, we're talking about a heck of a lot more money than that, but long-term, and
But it's definitely a partnership. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's like you guys said, once you develop the vision and that you can create something for the private market to say, this is something that we want to be a part of.
Right.
Right now, we just have hopes and dreams that it'll all work itself out.
And I'll go back to your comment, Councilman Heath, about the MoCan corridor. I think if we can lock that down to, hey, we're not going to have a overhead, an underground, or whatever it is, a
8-lane superhighway.
rail, that it will be used for community projects, and whether it's a hike and bike trail or a bike, whatever multimodal situation, we need to define that. And we've had several conversations on that, Jeff, with Campo and other board members, and it's been on the table for a while now. And to be honest with you, it hasn't gone anywhere. So I'm thinking it may not go anywhere.
You talking about MoCan in general? Or
Yeah,
just,
yeah. So I think we need to either put that to bed, put it to rest, and move on with what we need to do.
Since I view it, I've got my fingers crossed.
At least give it 60 more days. Huh?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the case. I think we got trapped into a legislative session, and people were fighting other fights, and
I
now it's time
understand,
to come
yeah,
back around.
I agree.
So it's still it hasn't lost its legs yet. It's just taking a break.
Not complete, yeah.
Okay. Well, like I said, if I had my druthers, we would continue Main Street through to 685. You have your gateway there on the east. I would like to see a full downtown plan, including the whole district. But again, this was kind of my impetus, is to develop something.
See, and let me chime in on that, because again, this has been a discussion, and it's probably in some of the original plans, I don't remember, is that where Main Street cuts over through the gin track, across the creek over to the Pfluger track. That's a big open space that maybe can be utilized for some other development project. But again, you begin to connect the entirety of what is considered downtown, and not just a smaller segment of it. I think you get more bang for your buck that way, long term.
You definitely have to plan in that phase, that sooner or later it's going to grow up to Wilbarger, and Mary, you might be able to just go across the street and have dinner instead of getting in the car and driving.
Right around the corner, yeah.
So I think that's definitely something we need to plan for long term, but we also need to keep pushing on this, so we don't get into the phase like we were in early 2000, where this just collects dust again. And this was kind of my efforts to make sure we keep moving forward on something. Having this estimated cost, which is something I've been pushing staff for a long time, shows that this is feasible. Now, it may not be the cheapest thing in the world, but it is feasible, which is something that I've been trying to find out myself. Again, this is about half of what I originally anticipated, so I appreciate you, Amy, coming in at that price. But it's something that I wanted to see. Just get a scope. You know,
Yeah,
you can't start building the foundation until you
Other
got
things that you might
cost
plan
estimate.
in here is when we do facilities planning, it may turn out that Timmerman's a great place for a city hall. You may have other things that come out of this
And some small conversations.
that, you know, everything fits together. And if we look at it, instead of looking at it in isolation like we have a tendency of doing, putting everything together, we can do something great.
So what I can do is I can go back, and Doug, if you want to join me, we can go back with city staff and look at a full, comprehensive, 110% view of what the downtown business district could be. And based off of what we see now, we can kind of project a little bit more. Amy, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if the scope will reduce the cost, you know, or if it, not reduce the cost, but the scope will incrementally increase compared to what we're talking about now once we have the ground broken open, or how it's going to work out. But we can take these blocks and just kind of use that as a sliding scale to where we can estimate costs a little bit easier, but still a little bit rough.
And one other comment, in reference to some of the business properties on the south side of Pecan that, you know, we're building on this side or improving on this side, not on the other side. That's not going to sit well with those property and business owners there. So I don't know if we can incorporate that somehow. I mean, again, a larger cost, definitely, but.
Yeah, we definitely need to include,
Southside Pecan.
we need to include Pecan and some sort of means of crossing Pecan. I've long been an advocate of some sort of crosswalk around 2nd or 3rd Street.
I think Development Services Center would be in agreement there, instead of having to run across Pecan.
play Frogger.
Yeah. And that's all I had, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.